5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelcey as well. Today we're talking a whole lot to talk about. We're ending the NBA season, coming up on the end stretch. Kansas is your new NCAA champions. Our journey to the draft continues as well, too, with a little bit of Southern comfort, looking at those divisions as well. And, you know, we might have a little something special at the end as well, too, talking to some of our fans as well. But we got a lot to talk about today.
Man, do we ever. It has been a wild, personally and on the sports world, last couple of days since we've seen you guys. It has been a crazy time. But you mentioned the Southern home cooking. I can't wait to talk about that. But really, I can't wait to talk about this NBA season coming to an end for a team that, let's just say, nobody really thought it would come to an end for.
Well, you know what? You kind of lined it up perfectly. You kind of teed it off. So let's go ahead and tip it off with our opening segment known as the Tip Off, brought to you by Dr. Squatch. Smell like a man, feel like a champion. All your manly soap needs available all under one product. Go and check them out as well, too, for all your male grooming needs. I would honestly say don't miss out on this opportunity. Smell good for yourself or for that special someone in your life as well. But you mentioned the NBA season coming up to an end, just a couple of games left. Some teams fighting for a playoff spot, some fighting for seeding. One surprise team, though, looks like they're fighting for the first ticket to Cancun, if you will, as well, too, is the Los Angeles Lakers. We're going to, just like every show, we're going to start right there and work our way back, but eliminated from playoff contention officially after losing to the Suns at just 31 wins so far on the season. I'm about as shocked as you are as well, too. I had them in our preseason prediction. I had them as the third seed overall in the West, and I had them going to the Western Conference Championship game, but I didn't expect this necessarily. It's kind of surprising that they completely missed out of 10 available playoff spots. You missed all 10 of them.
Yeah, look. We talked about this earlier in the season when we were looking at the Lakers and some of their woes. It just didn't work this year. I mean, between the injuries, between Frank Vogel being your head coach, which I still don't understand why everybody thinks Frank Vogel is a great head coach. Stop it. He's not. He does a great job with young talent. He does not do a good job with superstars. That's just how he is. That's how he always has been. Let's not change the facts and think he's something better. LeBron also doesn't do well with head coaches who actually like to coach. Period, point blank. On top of that, the guy who's supposed to take over the team, Anthony Davis, spends most of the season injured, played 26 games, not helping you any right now. And, well, just so happens to be the most paid player on the team. And Russell Westbrook, we all have literally just decided he wanted to be the scapegoat for everybody, and not to his own fault. He actually played pretty well most of the season. Yeah, but they really wanted to give him the scapegoat the whole season. They didn't want to talk about the fact that none of their old people that they signed could hit a shot. The old defensive players that they signed could not play defense. LeBron is a shadow of who LeBron is normally, still scoring 30-plus points in certain stretches in the season. Still, becoming the second all-time leading scorer in the NBA history, but not LeBron that we know it.
Not against the teams you need to beat as well, too. Like, they did a decent job beating up on some of the lower teams, but when push came to shove, there was a lot of things were missing, I think you could say as well, too. The geriatrics, you mentioned them on defense, they look like geriatrics on defense. It might have been some of the worst overall defensive effort we've seen throughout the season as well, too. I kind of want to ask you about this, well, because you mentioned Russell Westbrook kind of made the scapegoat. Obviously, there was a stretch there where he was absolutely terrible. It felt like he was shooting 8% from the field and shooting 30 shots a game. He could not get anything going. We kind of talked about it. It was a weird signing when you look at the dynamic of the team, but we thought just star power alone might make it work. What are your thoughts on that one looking back on it now as well? Do you think it could still work if maybe him, LeBron, and Anthony Davis could have all played together and stayed healthy and logged some minutes together? Or do you think this was the square peg in the octagon hole and it just had no chance at all?
Yeah, this is just weird all around. You're talking about LeBron has to be ball dominant. Russell Westbrook, to be effective, has to be ball dominant. Anthony Davis has to get the ball at least 40% of the time to be dominant. That alone, if you just do the math on that, that's about 160% you need to try to figure out how to get people a ball. And that's not possible at all. Like, no mathematician could look at that and be like, those numbers work. Let's do that. That's not going to work. And I guarantee you have plenty of mathematicians on that payroll team for Los Angeles who are doing the math right now, like, well, crap, what do we have to do now to get ourselves working going forward? And that's a big question I have for you, is obviously the Russell Westbrook thing in my eyes didn't work. What do you think they need to do to get this work? Do you think it's possible that they can make this a championship team after this next offseason, or do you think that they're going to have to make some wholesale changes?
I just don't know because you have no draft picks like 2028 because you traded them all away to try and build this geriatric squad, this all 2011 squad right now, basically.
Yeah.
Carmelo Anthony, as great as he was for the Portland coming off the bench, he's limited in his advanced age. He's basically a mid-range sniper at this point as well, too, can occasionally post up a smaller guy. LeBron's limited offensively as he can't quite dominate like he did. He still has flashes. He's still one of the leading scorers in the NBA. He can still get his. But it's not in a flow of the game, if that makes sense as well, too. It's not quite the same as we're used to. He's not taking it over. Russell Westbrook, you mentioned, they can work, but they need so much more around them. They need the right set of snipers. Anthony Davis has to just play center. He can't play power forward. He has to play center, and they need a power forward who can stretch the floor. LeBron could play point. Russ could play the 2. Then your 3 and your 4 have to be like Joe Ingles, 44% from 3 or something like that as well, too. Like you need guys that can hit from the outside and stagger their minutes. So like maybe LeBron takes an early break, 6 minutes in. Russ stays a little bit longer. Than when Russ checks out, LeBron comes back in. Like it's hard to make it work. And when they had more starting lineups this season than they will have wins. They had 39 starting lineups already and only 31 wins with a couple games to go. There's not a whole lot more you can work there. Like the jury's kind of still out, honestly. I really can't figure out if they can when you haven't played enough games together.
I'm not going to get over the fact that you just subtweeted Josh Hart right there. That was beautiful, by the way. If anybody doesn't know, Josh Hart and Joe Ingles, Josh Hart sent Joe Ingles a message asking what his vert was. Joe Ingles responded, "I'm 44% from 3-point line." And that's about the best mic drop I've ever seen. DJ, I appreciate the call out on that.
I will just kind of add that in there. Plug Joe Ingles on this team. How do you think that adds a couple of wins too? Like you put Joe Ingles at that 4 spot next to Anthony Davis, LeBron, and Westbrook. That adds a lot to them as well too. Even though he's a limited player, his vertical is literally I shoot threes. He refuses to answer it, but that's what this team needs is any ability to make defenders move.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. Somebody like Josh Hart, even Joe Ingles, Josh Hart, take your pick. Either one of them would have been a vast improvement over the type of players we talked about this in the lead up. You had a team where your big 3, they're all slashing in the paint type of players. None of them are outside players working themselves in. They are just straight go at the basket, full bore, and call it swell. And then you add in mid-range shooters. Then you add in slashers. But you never added in a dead-eye shooter. Like, I can't think of one guy they added thinking, hey, this guy's going to be our dead-eye shooter. Because none of them were. Like
maybe Malik Monk at his best he can shoot a little bit, but that's about all.
I'm sorry, but Malik Monk being a dead-eye shooter, you're going to call me Kareem at that point in time. I mean, this is just crazy to think about. It's whatever they were doing, Kurt Rambis, sorry, I shouldn't say Kurt Rambis. It was his wife in this situation. But byproduct being Kurt Rambis, having any say in this team. I actually, for once in my life, I agree with Magic Johnson in this situation. The fact that a Rambis had a say in the Lakers' offseason moves this last offseason was detrimental to their team.
I do want to say, too, that I think the one way this team could have worked is if they were able to go full out on defense. If they could get this team running frequently and they could out cardio teams, if that makes sense, I think that could have made them a lot more dangerous. That and staying healthy, obviously. The biggest thing was staying healthy. But LeBron, Westbrook, even Anthony Davis galloping in the fast break as well. Some of those guys that aren't really dead-eye shooters, but in a fast break at a wide-open corner 3, it's a whole lot easier than a half-court setting, getting the ball with 2 seconds to go so LeBron could get the assist. Like, I feel like there was a lot that could have been. The biggest thing was staying healthy, but moving forward, I don't know how you make this work next year. LeBron's not getting younger. You're not going to get any more defensive effort out of him. I mean, he's 1,000 years old. You don't expect much. Expect a little bit, and it didn't quite get that, but you don't get much. Westbrook is limited defensively. I mean, like he tries, but he could still get by him. Anthony Davis, when he's healthy, he obviously makes things a lot better, but you mentioned 26 games is not enough. So I really just don't know what you do. I really just don't know what the answer is. But
I mean, look, you look at this. I'll just add this last point in, and I look at Anthony Davis, and I love Anthony Davis. I think he's been a great player in the league in the league, but he's just not been healthy. And you have to figure out, if you're the Lakers, to put a pretty little bow on this package of that insane contract he has left and be able to ship him off for a whole lot of young talent or three picks in this draft. Like, that's the only way I can see this working is they get picks, and they get rid of Anthony Davis' contract. And you can't pay any of that because that's the only chance you have, because then you can get some mid-level exceptions in there and things like that. But, yeah, right now I look at Anthony Davis as, unfortunately, you can't be a Laker anymore, because unless LeBron decides he wants to go back to Cleveland, which, well, Cleveland fans, I don't recommend you hope for that. But, yeah, that's the only way I can see it working out next year.
We'll definitely have to wait and see. Maybe they can reverse that trade and get Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, and everybody back. We'll see as well, too. But we would be remiss not to mention, too, to not just make this a Lakers tip-off as well, too. I want to mention the team that bounced them out of the playoff contention for the second year in a row, the Phoenix Suns. 63 wins so far, with a chance to get 65. And honestly, it's one of the better overall team seasons we've seen in a long, long time. I think, obviously, it's almost just became clockwork seeing them win. We're like, yeah, they won again. It almost feels like, not taken for granted, but it doesn't quite get the same hype as like the Warriors teams that were winning 60 games, not the 73 one necessarily. Those Cavaliers teams that are winning like 66. This team is really, really good considering they're coming off a finals loss. Very rarely does a team that loses in the finals bounce back like this, the exception being like those Spurs of 2014. But they've done an incredible job bouncing back by Monty Williams, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and even DeAndre Ayton, who didn't take that step forward. He still has been just as good and been able to, and it's as a team effort with him and Mikal Bridges. It's been incredible.
I'm glad you mentioned Mikal Bridges. Let's just go ahead and chalk his name up as, wow, yeah, he's really turning into that player type of guy. Cam Johnson as well has had a fantastic season in comparison. He kind of really took off in the playoffs last year and has continued that momentum. And, the guy that I'm a big fan of, and I talk about his story every single time I get the opportunity, Cam Payne. Let's just say he continued his progression from last season. And when you lost Chris Paul for this season during the middle of the season, it didn't hurt. You were still able to win with Cam Payne there. And that in and of itself tells you all the story you need, because just look at the playoffs last year. Literally, Chris Paul had to play with one arm for them to be successful. Exactly. And this year, you were able to let Chris Paul take his mid-season vacation to Cancun and come back and be healthy.
It's kind of crazy because I'm just actually looking back at our predictions for the season, at least for mine. I had the Suns as the number one seed in the West. I didn't get that part right, but I didn't expect it to be 60-plus wins and 8 games ahead of second place, the Memphis Grizzlies, who have 55. That part I didn't expect. I was thinking maybe they'd be at like 53, and I had number 2 Denver at like 50, 51, something like that. Like I didn't expect them to be the absolute juggernaut as well, too. Like, that's what's really surprised is how they've ran through. And then on the Eastern Conference, Miami Heat, if I'm not mistaken, clinching the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference as well, too, with a recent win over the surging Celtics, who are like 27-7 in the last 34 or something, who flipped the switch. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown squad got it rolling, and the East got really, really competitive down the stretch here, and I look forward to seeing those playoffs.
Yeah, look, the East, though, is in a very creepy situation because you have the Nets in that play-in game for an 8 seed. Like, they're not even playing for the 7 seed. They're playing for the 8 seed. And I'm sorry, I don't want to get matched up versus the Nets because, yes, they suck defensively. There's no doubt in like that. You could just hang that on the wall. We're bad defensively until we get Ben Simmons. Yes, correct. However, you can also keep putting up points with the best of them. I mean, I don't think there's a better offensive team than the Nets. Granted, their defense is so bad, but in the playoffs, I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's all about how well you can score in crunch time. And even like in those tough moments, if you can go a whole game without having a 3 to 5 minute stretch of going scoreless in the playoffs, you're going to win every time.
Exactly. I mean, they'll be playing the Hawks by the look of it, and that's quite the game. Those are 2 teams, if they get into the playoffs, everyone's going to be a little bit nervous for as well, too. They can work their way in. Cleveland looks like they'll be playing for that 7th seed. It looks like, if I'm not mistaken, they'll be matched up with New Orleans. If things hold true, we still have a couple games left. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well, too. And Toronto climbing in from what felt like a certainty to be a playing game, climbing themselves out of the play-in tournament altogether as well, too. So very competitive stuff to see as well, too. And don't worry, guys. I know that we will have our NBA award predictions coming up before too long. We're not going to do it today because we still have some season left as well, too. But keep an eye out for that as well, too. See who we think is going to walk away with some hardware. So we will be getting to that for you NBA fans out there as well, too. This isn't just a Lakers podcast, so let's not get that twisted as well. So.
No, it's a Lakers hater podcast some days, though. I'll take full credence for that one. That's my fault, guys. I'm sorry.
You know what? Take your moment to shine as well, too. They said, don't make fun of my squad. Don't make fun of the geriatrics. Have your moment to shine. If you miss one of 10 spots with that much power, that much firepower, it's bound to happen. So It is
exactly
what it is. But that's going to do it for us on the tip-off as well, too. Before we get into our football topic, I will say congratulations to the Kansas Jayhawks, though, as well, too, capturing that national championship game with an incredible second-half rally after North Carolina came out of the gates like a boat race and took it to them early on. Kansas staying resilient, staying strong, coming back and getting their first title since, I think, 2007, 2008, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's been about 14 years. So congratulations to Bill Self and Kansas for getting through that bracket as well, too, because this was a hectic March Madness.
Since Mario Chalmers hit the step back against Memphis. That was their
Derrick Rose, yeah.
Yeah, so that's if anybody doesn't remember why I remember that, it's because Justin Timberlake at the ESPYs the next year wore his Memphis jersey and just imitated Derrick Rose, like just put your hand in the face like this and you're good. But yeah, so
just make a few free throws too, guys. Just like 1 or 2 free throws down the stretch. That's all you need.
Yeah, no, one of the most insane comebacks I've ever seen. Obviously historically the best comeback we've ever seen in a national championship game. But on top of that, just as far as just the way they did it was very efficient. It wasn't like they were like rushing to come back. It was like, you know what? We're going to keep doing what we do. The wheels are not going to fall off the whole game. We're going to be fine. And it was just a patient. First thing you do is get a couple stops. 13 minutes in, 13 minutes left in the second half. Oh, guess what? We're only down by 9. We got this, guys. It's like, what? Whoa, this is a national championship game. You don't just do this. That's not normal. But Bill Self, man, 2 titles, joining the illustrious multi-title for a coach situation. He's already one of the winningest coaches of all time, the winningest college team of all time as it is with Kansas. So, very, 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 very good to see the Jayhawks. So a blue blood back on top is bittersweet,
It felt like it was meant to be when you saw them, North Carolina, Duke, Villanova, and then UCLA. The team, though, Blue Bloods were climbing back as well, too.
I wanted the Peacocks to I needed the Peacocks to fly, man. I just needed it to happen.
It was, they had a fantastic run as well, too. The very fantastic run. We'll be talking about another Cinderella run at the end of the show, so stick around for that as well, too. Yeah, we'll mention that. But that'll do it for our basketball coverage. Now we're going to head into Kelcey's second favorite part of every show. That is the main event. The main event brought to you by Colorcast, the premier sports audio casting app on iOS, soon to be coming to Android as well, too. If you haven't already, check them out as well, too. All you need for sports commentating, commentary, talk shows, debate, everything you want, you can find a little something for there as well, too. And Kelcey, the journey to the draft week 2 is underway. If those of you who know with us last year, this is where we go by divisions, check out what their post-free agency, what they did, then talk about their needs heading into the draft as well, too. Last week, we talked about the West. Now we're heading to some Southern Comfort. We're going to talk about the AFC and the NFC South as well, too. So, you know what, Kelcey? I think we're going to start right away in the NFC South. And you know what? What better team to start with than your favorite team in the division, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Well, I don't know about my favorite team. I mean, but you got to say it's
top
very
4.
interesting. Yeah, they're in the top 4 of this division. That's absolutely correct. But yeah, no, this is a very interesting team to look at because we talk about biggest additions, biggest losses. Usually it's always a player. Not in this case. The biggest addition was a player unretiring and your coach going to the front office. And now he's being replaced by Todd Bowles, your coordinator. It's a very interesting thing to look at with this team. Again, didn't lose a whole lot as far as important positions to free agency. Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh being the big 2 that you really haven't re-signed yet, but they're still out there.
And you still have Joe Tryon to fill in those spots as well, too.
Yeah. And, Alex Kappa probably being your biggest loss, honestly. If you're going to look at anybody leaving, it's your starting guard going to Cincinnati. That hurts a little bit. But other than that, I mean, you have it all filled back in. You have Ali Marpet retiring, which does hurt. Let's not sugarcoat that. But you have opportunities to fix those. You look right here, their picks. They have a pick in the first round, pick in the second round, third round. They have three straight picks right there, first through third round, that can easily get them those linemen they need. I mean, 100%.
And they brought in Shaq Mason as well to plug some of those holes as well, too. Yeah. And you mentioned the Bruce Arians, Tom Brady thing. I'm really curious how those lined up as well, too. Did Brady come back because Bruce was leaving? Did Bruce leave because Tom Brady's coming back? We'll never know the full answer, but there's some smoke, there's a little bit of stank, and there's some stanky fire around there as well, too. So I'm really curious how these things all intertwined. And you did mention Todd Bowles as the head coach. I was surprised they didn't go with Byron Leftwich, honestly, as well, too, especially Brady coming back as well. So not that Todd Bowles doesn't deserve it by any means, as he is a former head coach. Maybe that's why they went with this, since it was a shorter notice thing. But was kind of surprised they didn't go with the Byron Leftwich to go with the quarterback coming back.
Yeah, no, it is strange. I mean, obviously, I'm with you. I think Byron Leftwich deserves an opportunity anywhere at
Hmm.
this point in time. Somebody, please give this man a head coaching job, please.
Hmm.
But this was a situation where I think you're exactly right. It's like, all right, we're getting into the draft. We need to have a plan by the draft of what we're going to do. So let's just take, we've already been building this plan with Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles. Let's just take and put our coordinator here and fill up. And that's exactly what they're doing. Which, again, them filling up is not like a normal team filling up. It's a lot like you see Alabama teams, like their coaching staffs fill up. You're getting previous head coaches and previous coordinators that are filling into these extra roles too. So it's the same thing that's happening here with Tampa, where they're filling Todd Bowles as a head coach, but they're also getting fill-ins with former like top tier positional coaches that are now moving into a coordinator role. So it's very interesting for that aspect. Rob Gronkowski, whether he's going to come back or not, that's a question, but doesn't matter. You lose OJ Howard again. He wasn't even a part of this team for real. Let's be honest about that. They franchise tag Godwin, so you're fine there.
They did
You
re-sign
bring
him
in,
actually too. They even got him long term on top of it.
yeah. Oh, yeah. He cashed a nice little paycheck. Let's just put it that way. Speaking of cashing a paycheck, Russell Gage cashing a paycheck to come down to Tampa. So that's he's an underrated player, but he's proved with Matt Ryan that he can be that extra third wheel, if you will. That
Hell,
works.
he was the first wheel for most of last year on top of it as well too. So we talked a lot about their offseason. This team is like a soap opera. I wish they could do Hard Knocks because you could talk about them all day and night, it feels like. But we're gonna go into now the journey to the draft. Now they have their picks early on. What do you when we look at this team? If I'm in charge, if I'm making the picks, I think their biggest need is gonna be in the secondary. I think they got to load up that secondary. They gave up too many big plays last year, left, right, up, down, all over. Looking at the Rams games, every single that game, those games are track meets. I think you go to the secondary, and I want, you know what, a guy who might be there for him. I like Roger McCreary, the corner out of Alabama, or Kyer Elam, the corner out of Florida,
How
depending
dare
on which
you?
one.
You did not just say Roger McCreary is out of Alabama.
No, I said Auburn.
I know, I'm just messing with
Okay, I would say, hold on now, sir. If I did say Alabama, I meant it to say he's from the state of Alabama. Either way, the point is that is another Auburn corner to add to this mix, which would be kind of hilarious. But I like the idea of bringing in another corner because we saw Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean get dinged up last year. And then you had to bring in Richard Sherman, who was a coach, basically. So I like the idea of bolstering up that secondary because you still have a fantastic pass rush. Just get a little bit of help on the back end.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think corner is an opportunity there, and I just had to pick fun at you. I'm sorry. It was too good of an opportunity not to poke
Just be
fun.
careful. I'm going to send you a Roll Tide birthday card.
I mean, you already send the little shooting confetti every year, so I've learned to avoid those ones.
This time it's going to have some nice Alabama A's flying at it.
Oh God, I will literally burn. It's like, if never mind. I'm going to stop right there. We're talking Southern. I don't need to go too Southern conversational into this one. But look, I think this is an opportunity with the 27th pick. I don't think you have to necessarily pick a position in this situation. I think this is a best available, but you are looking at two specific positions. You're either looking at corner, like you said, or for me, I'm looking at the guard center region personally as the opportunity. And I think there's a guy that's moving up a lot of draft boards, and that's Jamari Salyer out of Georgia, a young, fast, has played every offensive line position for Georgia, and he's strong. And he's the guy that fits perfectly right next to Tristan Wirfs. And, it's wishful thinking. I don't know if he'll be there for 27. Or if at 27, if you have the opportunity to pick Roger McCreary, by all means, that's your number one pick. Because he is a much, in my opinion, better player overall than Salyer will be for your team. But I do think Salyer, for me, is the guy most likely to be there at 27 that I think they'll go with.
Absolutely. If you're Tampa Bay, the NFC is really thin, and you are one of the most loaded teams out there as well, too. So there's not a whole lot that you can't do here. You just can't go backwards, and it looks so that's a good spot for them to be in. Next up, we're looking at the New Orleans Saints in the NFC South as well, too. A team taking a look here. They did just add a second first-round pick, trading with the Eagles as well, too, giving up some future capital. So as the Saints do, going all in for the season, keeping Jameis Winston as we see their base addition, losing Marcus Williams, the should be perennial Pro Bowl safety, vastly underrated guy as well, too. You have two first-round picks now. You don't really have anything next year. You somehow are playing cat magic to still stay afloat. Go ahead and start off with you, Kelcey. What are your thoughts on the Saints here now that they have two first-round picks?
Have fun. You have a big hole you need to replace in the name of Terran Armstead. Terran Armstead, sorry. And that, honestly, we could have put him as the biggest loss as well. But, it's like that would actually be physically the biggest loss. I do think performance-wise, Marcus Williams is a bigger loss. But I do look, you have 2 first-round picks now. I think you're obviously looking like, okay, well, we have cap gymnastics we have to prove, so let's get some quality here in the first round. And I do think one of these 2 picks has got to be an offensive lineman. And the other pick, I think you probably go defense. And I'm always torn with this one with them. I do think they need a defensive lineman, but you lost Marcus Williams and you brought Marcus May in, which is a good move. But is there still enough there secondary wise to perform well? I don't know yet. So I think if I'm picking for him, I'm going offensive line with the first option, and then defensive line secondary. Who's got the better position better available with that first round pick? I think that's where I have to go with the Saints. But man, I think in this situation with a new head coach, you're just kind of like you're ready to see what you can do. Jameis Winston has proven that you can win in New Orleans, so I think this is an opportunity for them. If they just make the right moves here, they have a great opportunity to win a division that's a lot of question marks right now.
When I look at the Saints, it was kind of surprised to see them trade into the first round and trade with another first round pick at 16. So this tells me one of a couple of things. A, they're going to try and package those picks and get like a quarterback if they start to slip to like 10, 11, 12, something like that. Maybe they really like somebody and they don't want to keep Jameis long term. Or B, they're going for it right now. They're going for it this year and they're like, you know what? We got Jameis. We know we can win with him. We think we've tamed the interceptions post LASIK surgery as well too. We feel comfortable with him. So I agree with you. One of those picks needs to go offensive lineman. You got to replace Terran Armstead. You're getting a little bit older. You got to keep him healthy. I like a Trevor Penning from University of Northern Iowa. I like him in a place like this as well too. He's a guy I think could be available, just a mauler. If you're able to, if Alvin Kamara can play next year, assuming how that all plays out, you'll have Michael Thomas as well too. Get that offensive lineman. And with that next pick, I like doubling down on the offense. I know you said go defense as well. Defense, they were really, really good last year, even with terrible quarterback play as well. I like doubling down on offense, and I like going with a receiver here to complement Michael Thomas. I like Jahan Dotson, the quick speedster out of Penn State. That first run of receivers will most likely be gone with the Olaves and the Garrett Wilsons, etc. But I can see Jahan Dotson being here and performing just as well. You put him there next to Mike Thomas, who I assume if Mike Thomas is healthy, he's going to look like can't guard Mike again. Kamara underneath, Jameis Winston playing check down. And with that defense, we've already seen that defense is very, very good. So honestly, I like the idea of doubling down on the offense because if you're planning on going for it all, you go for it all here. Second round, maybe fill in that extra offensive line spot, fill in some defensive secondary depth, things like that as well too. So, but if you did that to get a quarterback, I imagine they might be trading up. Maybe they do like a Malik Willis if he starts to slip and they want to be able to jump Pittsburgh altogether.
And that's funny you mentioned that the package is for a deal, and I thought for sure Philadelphia was going to be the one. But, we had also mentioned that New Orleans, before they had signed Jameis, could be the opportunity to move up as well. Just because, look, you need a quarterback, right? You can't trust your tight end to be your quarterback anymore now that the coach that loved him is no longer coaching for you. So that's not the case. So I do love that idea that maybe they package it, and I also love the idea of doubling down on a receiver here. And it's tough though because it's like you look at it and you just if you just look at it on paper, you're like, okay, there is a gap on our defense. Or there will be in the next few years. Like those are the 2 ways you look at this, and depending on which side of the coin you fall on, personally, I think there's a hole now, but like for you think there's a hole down the road for them. So you're like, I'm not as worried about filling it right now. Whereas I could fill that second receiver role, which we haven't had a second receiver in New Orleans since Jimmy Graham was your number 2 receiver with Drew Brees at quarterback. So I do think that makes a lot of sense that they would go that way in their own right. And I do like Jahan Dotson. He slides himself into a 19th overall pick. Well, he proved some people wrong. Let's just say that.
I will say if Drew Brees was still the quarterback, I think you forego that receiver and you grab someone in the 7th round and watch him turn into a Pro Bowl caliber player as well too. But considering
they could grab us off the board just as a free agent and turn us into an all-pro receiver for a year.
Exactly. Like because you're going with Jameis, you're showing you want to win now. You think this division's very winnable. You smacked around Tampa Bay last year defensively as well too. You beat them twice. You're 4-0 in the regular season against them in the last 2 years. I think here, this is why you're going for it now. That's why I plug those holes. But I agree with you. Defensively, you got to worry about that as they are getting older, especially in some key spots. So definitely. The Saints, an interesting team to keep an eye out for, and keeping a lot of your picks this year as well too. Like you're basically foregoing next year as they've done with their cap, and now they're doing with their draft picks. Just push it down the road. We'll worry about it later. It's the student loan
It's somebody
deferment.
else's problem.
Student loan deferment gone NFL. So that'll take us to our next pick, and we are looking at the Atlanta Falcons here and taking a look at your biggest loss, of course, arguably the best player in franchise history, arguably, in Matt Ryan, definitely top 2 or 3 when you factor in longevity and everything as well too. Biggest addition, arguably Casey Hayward, fantastic addition, fantastic corner, getting a little up there, but still can make plays. You got pick number 8. You were all in for Deshaun Watson and fell just short by the sounds of it. You're heading into the draft. You got pick number 8. Kelcey, where are you going here with pick number 8?
I still love the idea of picking Derek Stingley for no other reason. I think Casey Hayward could play a safety role and fill a safety position. But if that's not the way you want to go, and Casey doesn't want to agree to that, because obviously he was a big free agent signing, and I wouldn't blame him if he doesn't do that. I'm just thinking for long-term career-wise, I think that's a good move for him for 4 more years. But again, that not being the move, I look at this and you got rid of all your linebackers. At number 8, you might have a homegrown kid right there in Nakobe Dean. I'm just saying, and I feel like I just maybe stole your pick based off the look you just gave me, but I don't know. What do you? I just think there's 2 things here. There's offensive line or there's linebacker, and that's where I'm going with this. And I really still want to say go get Derek Stingley. Like my first thought is still go get Derek Stingley Jr. because I think it's an experiment that'll work. But again, if you're not going to do that, and most teams aren't as experimental as my brain goes when it comes to positional players, like my Madden team doesn't look like it should ever because I like this guy should play here because he is this talent. It's like it doesn't work that way in real life. Contracts and egos play a role. But yeah, so I mean that's not going to work. So you obviously want to go something that's actually going to work for you. You traded away one of the most insanely athletic linebackers in Foyesade Oluokun, or sorry, you let him go in free agency. So that doesn't help you. And that was it. Like that was your linebacker, and now you have nothing at linebacker. Nothing really starting caliber NFL wise. That's there.
You still got Deion Jones. You still got him hanging around, but
starting caliber NFL wise,
Deion Jones to stay healthy and get out of his own way, revert back to like 2 years ago for him. Then yeah,
that's true. No, that's fair. But then you also have that offensive line. I mean, honestly, I feel like with the Falcons, you have a lot of holes. You have a lot of picks this year that are in the top. You have 5 picks in the top 100. Those 5 picks have all got to go offensively, other than one. Like this first pick, I think goes defense. I think the other ones go offense, and they go offensive line. Oh, by the way, offensive line one more time. I don't think there's a way they go quarterback here. I know a lot of people have them picking quarterback. I don't see it. I think there's better opportunities for this team to be successful. And I think Marcus Mariota is not a bad like spot holder for a couple of years.
Not at all. I think Marcus Mariota could be good as well too. And I look at it, I'm kind of in the same vein. When I wrote down for my Falcons pick, I just put defense across the board as well too. Because offensively, you obviously have to do some reloading as well too. But defensively, you got Grady Jarrett and AJ Terrell. You got some centerpieces there. Like you got guys to build up. AJ Terrell was fantastic last year.
Marlon Davidson came on big last season.
Davidson, a good pass rusher. Grady Jarrett can still make plays up the middle. Deion Jones, if you could put him as like an off-ball linebacker, I think he'd be even more dangerous. Nakobe Dean was one of my first choices as well. You mentioned him. I also want to mention Jermaine Johnson, the second out of Florida State. You get him as an edge rusher opposite Marlon Davidson. Get after Jameis Winston. Get after Tom Brady. Get those opportunities for AJ Terrell and Casey Hayward in coverage as well. I like the Derek Stingley with AJ Terrell as well too. I think you start building the defense now, and then next year you look to work on the offense as well too, because I think your defense is a little bit close in the offense. Offense, it's Kyle Pitts and maybe Cordell Patterson. You're already going to miss Calvin Ridley this year anyway for a suspension we won't talk too much about as well too. We'll roll our eyes at that. But anyway, and you mentioned you have those top 5 and those 5 picks in the top 100. I think you could build those like defense, offense. It's best player available, but I think defensively is where I'd like to start with. I like best defensive player available to start with.
Yeah, I just have to point out, like, you have to tell people by now, if you haven't learned through our coverage of the last college offseason or the last college season and especially the national championship game in the playoffs for Georgia, Nakobe Dean has become a favorite of this podcast in a level that I don't think anybody else can imagine. Like, we got to watch this dude be an absolute freak of nature on TV and in person during the combine. It's crazy to see. Well, we didn't get to see him at the combine. He actually didn't do any workouts, but we got to see the human being. Just didn't get to see him be a freak athlete. But no, it was like if you guys haven't figured that out by now, Nakobe Dean should be the number one linebacker in our eyes.
You'll see when we release our big boards as well too, ranking the 50 prospects as well. So keep an eye out for that as well too. You'll definitely don't want to miss that. But that's what we have for the Falcons as well too. A lot of holes to fill, but still not quite as many as the next team we have here in the Carolina Panthers, rounding out the NFC South as well too. Carolina with a big loss in Hassan Reddick, who had a really, really strong season last year as well too. And the biggest addition, a punter who might have to play quarterback for them depending on how things go, and Johnny Hecker as well too. They honestly, when you look at Carolina, they got a lot of good pieces. Problem is getting that quarterback spot filled. They cannot seem to get it filled no matter what. They've been in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, seems like 4 times in the last year and a half or so. They're in every quarterback sweepstakes, it feels like, minus the Baker Mayfield one. Having trouble finding a way to fill that spot. You got pick number 6 this year, but then you don't got a whole lot after that. You got to wait a while to pick again. So you got to hit pick number 6. I'm going to go and go first on this one.
Yep.
I think you pull the Band-Aid off. I think you take your quarterback. I'm looking at Matt Corral. I think he's QB1. If he's sitting there at 6, you run that card to him and you're like, you and Sam Darnold are going to compete. Sam's going to be kind of the starter unless he's absolutely terrible. Then Matt, you're going to slide on in. We're going to ease you in a little bit. When in doubt, throw it to DJ Moore or CMC. You got some stuff to work with there. Matt Rule's on a blazing hot seat right now. That might take out the Buffalo Wild Wings challenge. How hot that seat is. I think you just got to make a move here. If Matt Corral shows promise, maybe he buys you another year. But I think you try and go get that quarterback instead of trying to patchwork it right now. You're not quite good enough to patchwork the quarterback like some other teams are doing. But you're not bad enough to get pick 1 or 2 at this point. You had too much talent for that. So go get a guy here, a Matt Corral, who might slip to you at 6.
Well, here's the thing with this team. I honestly don't think they're that bad of a team on personnel-wise. They have a lot of good young pieces, especially defensively. In their offensive skill positions, they've added a few, Deontay Freeman being one of them, as a second running back next to CMC, which I think is a fantastic move. Because now you add a little power asset to your game that CMC doesn't have to go bang every single time you're in the red zone.
Still got Chuba Hubbard too on that team.
Yeah, and exactly, yeah, Chuba Hubbard, and he did very well in CMC's absence last year. DJ Moore obviously is still DJ Moore. Get him the ball in his hands and watch him work. Do they still have? Oh, why can't I think of his name now?
Robbie Anderson? I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you still have skill. You just need an offensive line. Am I saying go get an offensive line? No. I'd actually probably add a couple extra words in there. Don't go get offensive line at number 6. I'm agreeing with you. I think you go get Matt Corral. I don't think there's a quarterback that fills your needs and what you need if you're Matt Rule other than Matt Corral. Like, you need a guy that's safe with a lot of upside. And unless you're picking Desmond Ridder at 6, which I think if you're going to pick Desmond Ridder, you trade back to the 30 with whoever you want to trade with to get into the 30s or even that first round, the first couple picks of the second round, and you take all their assets and you give them the number 6 overall pick. But I think other than Desmond Ridder, there's not a safer quarterback with a higher upside than Matt Corral. Like, he is the safest option here. There's a lot of guys that are very talented, but he is by far the safest, and I think this is the way you have to go, is go Matt Corral. But don't be surprised. I really don't think they're that bad. I don't think the Panthers are going to be that bad. I have a wishful thinking, I guess, about the Panthers going forward.
I will say I don't think they're a quarterback away. I think that's the thing. So I think trying to patch in like a Matt Ryan, a Carson Wentz, a Marcus Mariota, guys like that's not going to help you enough. I think at this point, get your young quarterback, then try and build with him as well, because all your best players are already young as it is. Jeremy Chin, all going down the line, Brian Burns, they're all kids. Like, you have a bunch of young players. CJ Henderson, like, just get the quarterback to kind of grow with them as well, too, at this point. That's why.
Samuel Jr.
It's not Samuel Jr. is a Charger.
Not to say. Joe Horn, or J.C. Horn.
J.C. Horn, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, you got so many young players.
The other strong young corner.
Exactly. Yeah. What a fantastic rookie corner class that was. So I think if you could just build with them as well, too, Derek Brown. Like, you got the young players, just continue building with them. Trying to patchwork in a old quarterback is not it won't work for them like it will probably work for some of the other teams we'll be talking about at some point too. So that's what we have for the NFC South and the Panthers as well too. Go get yourself a quarterback. Don't overthink it. Even Kenny Pickett's not a bad pick here as well too. I like Corral better. If Corral's gone, Kenny Pickett's worthy at pick number 6 for this team, I think, as well too.
Yeah, look, if Corral's gone, go Kenny Pickett. Or honestly, I still stand by, if Corral's gone, trade back, get Desmond Ridder at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round, and take some assets, and that way you can get more picks and get offensive line. And if they can do that, I think they could definitely turn their season around, and I don't think win the division, but at least compete for second. Maybe
If you can get a good return, definitely as well too. Because like we mentioned, you have 131 spots between your next pick after pick 6, so you definitely want.
Yeah, I mean, you don't pick again until midway through the 4th round. Like that's just not good enough.
Exactly. So that's gonna do it for the NFC South. But now we got to move on over to the AFC South as well, to a division that features two of the worst teams in the league, one of the most disappointing, and the number one seed in the AFC is. So a very unique division as well too. We're gonna start at the bottom of the barrel. We're gonna look at the Jacksonville Jaguars as well too, picking number 1 again for the second year in a row. A bunch of picks. Losing Miles Jack in big loss in free agency, but you did bring in quite a few pieces, including Christian Kirk, who could be the biggest addition or the biggest flop, considering the amount of money they gave him. So that is a big one for them. They got a bunch of picks, including really 2 first-round picks when you look at 1 and 33 as well, too, realistically. Kelcey, what are you looking at for the number 1 overall pick for the Jaguars?
Don't overthink this. Like if I am Jacksonville, I purely just don't overthink this, and I protect my number 1 pick, because if you're a Jacksonville Jaguar fan, or if you follow Jacksonville at any point in time, you know Sunshine is your actual number 1 pick in your heart. So you know what you do is you protect your Sunshine by providing just a little bit of shade protection on the outside of his offensive line in the form of Evan Neal. I think it's just too simple of a open hole, circular hole, fill in with circular peg. Like, just do it. Don't go fancy. Don't try to overthink things. Just protect your quarterback. That's all I need for you.
It's interesting. So you look at the best players at the top of the board are about our edge rushers this year, and for the most part, I don't think edge rusher is as important for this team when you look at the division. It's a division of running backs and running the football. So I think in this case, you can have a case you'll have the best quarterback by the end of the year, depending on Trevor Lawrence's ascension and what happens with Matt Ryan and Ryan Tannehill if they decline rapidly as well too. So
let's be honest. The Colts could go 13-4 or 14-3, and Jacksonville could still go 6-11 and still have the better actual quarterback because of how their teams are built.
It's very possible.
Matt Ryan's play level for this season is very low. Like, he doesn't have to do much, just be better than Carson Wentz.
Which won't be that hard, honestly, as well, too, especially in key moments. So we'll definitely have to see that, but we'll get to them in a moment. But I agree with you, offensive line. Evan Neal's a great pick. I really like Ikem Okongwu as well, too. I think he would be a fantastic pick here. And I look at Doug Peterson, now the head coach. When he was at his best, he had Lane Johnson and Jason Peters, 2 big, mauling athletic linemen. I think Ikem Okongwu will slide right in there. You can't go wrong either way. Heck, you could take Tyler Linderbaum to center if you want. Do anything you can to help your quarterback make his job easier. You put a bunch of money into Christian Kirk and some of the receivers. You'll have Travis Etienne coming back. Build that wall in front of him and let him work. If you can force a shootout with some of the other teams in this division, you are in a good spot as well. So, and you still have
James Robinson. Still have a guy to hand the ball off to. Like,
James, you got him. You got pick 33, 65, 70. You got plenty of picks. Use all of them on the offensive line if you want. Load up. Like, you really can't go wrong here, but don't overthink pick number 1. I agree with you on that one. So
yeah, it's too simple. I mean, I hate to say it that way, and it's tough in a draft where there's so many good edge rushers, and you did lose somebody like Miles Jack. Like, obviously, you probably want to I want to go fix my defense. No, just do the right thing.
You got to recover from the Urban Meyer situation first, and that starts with an offensive line. It makes everything better as well. So
thank God they kicked the right person out this time.
It took long enough. That's going to take us to the second team in the AFC South, and a team that now has 2 first-round picks, something that they haven't had 1 first-round pick in the first round in a very long time, and now they find themselves with 2. The Houston Texans, coming off that, their biggest loss, trading Deshaun Watson to the Browns for everything. Just insert meme here. They acquired
not 1, not 2, not 3.
Just everything. And of course, the biggest addition, we kept it simple. Cap space, draft capital, a chance to finally rebuild, considering this has been going downhill for the last 2.5, 3 seasons as well, too. The Bill O'Brien effect in full force. You got picks number 3 and 13 now in the first round, along with pick number 37. So we're going to take a look at just the first 2 first-round picks here. And I'm going to jump first on this one. For me, it's pretty simple. Best player available. Honestly, just find the best players at that spot. At number 3, maybe that's a Sauce Gardner. You get a number 1 corner to put in there as well, too, help you out there. Then let's say pick number 13, a guy who might slip. I like Devin Lloyd there as well, too. Maybe double dip on your defense. You get a lockdown corner and a captain of your defense. Not bad. You got a lot of holes to fill. I don't think you overthink it. You just look at it. Unless you really like one of these quarterbacks, you could take it 3. But I think they want to try out Davis Mills one more year. I'd say just take your best available player, whatever you're thinking. You can't. There's not a whole lot of places you can go wrong. You could take Chris Olave at pick number 3, and I think it's a good pick, honestly. Like, there's a lot of options, but I like Sauce Gardner and Devin Lloyd if they're available in those spots.
I didn't think about Sauce going to Houston truthfully. It hadn't crossed my mind for no other reason than, again, this is a edge-heavy class, and I'm looking at the edge rushers. I think if Evan Neal goes 1, I have somebody not an edge rusher going 2, and that leaves what most people think is the unanimous number 1 pick in Aiden Hutchinson sitting there at number 3 here for Houston. And that's where I think they go. I think they go either Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau. Personally, I like Thibodeau a little more for this Houston team, for the way they're built. I think Thibodeau fills a lot more of their roles because we talked about this a few times off air, DJ. He's not just a edge rusher. He's like a kind of combo Jadeveon Clowney mixed with Miles Jack in a lot of ways in the way he can do. You can drop him into coverage. He's not going to be the greatest coverage guy. He's not like Miles Jack, who used to play running back at UCLA type of talent, but like he is a talented player in his own right, but he's just not as big as Jadeveon Clowney. But at the same time, he's probably better suited for defending a run than he is a pass, but he can still get off the edge pretty well. I do think Kayvon Thibodeau is just such a dynamic athlete. You can find a lot to do with him in Houston. He fills the most amount of holes with 1 pick that you could possibly make. Let's just put it that way. With 13, though, man, 13's tough. I mean, if you're going to focus on Davis Mills and you didn't get offensive line at 3, you go offensive line here at 13. And I feel like I can say that for everybody, but really in this case, I think Charles Cross might make it to him at 13. And let's just say Charles Cross, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch any Charles Cross film, please do yourself a favor if you like any sort of offensive line play and go watch Charles Cross's film. And just like turn it on for 35 to 45 seconds. Get through 2 plays. And I guarantee you're going to watch the entire rest of the video and try to find 7 more videos like I did. Because that's how good of a player he is and how just fascinating he is to watch.
Especially
on the outside.
As a pass blocker too. Like he will keep that. You can make a case for him to go number 1. Like we're keeping Trevor Lawrence safe. We don't care about the run. Grab him.
Yeah, and this is it. And I'm this again, me saying they go pass rusher at 3, 13 is going to go offensive line. If they decide to do neither, take Ike Ekwonu at 3. Guaranteed you won't be happier. Just do it. You talk about a guy who you can watch 30 seconds of film and be happy about. That's your other option.
And Lovie Smith too. He's the defensive mind he is too. He's looking at it as like, I could build a defense. Davis Mills just has to be Rex Grossman. Here I come.
Oh, exactly. And that's the thing is Lovie Smith is built for a team that all they have to do is move the ball on time. And Davis Mills, like through all the bad, he was actually a pretty big bright spot for this Texans team last year. And, give him a little bit of help and you'd be surprised what they can do.
Absolutely as well, too. I think there's something to work with there, but definitely, at least they have picks now. They haven't had picks in a while, so they finally got some first-round picks again after all the trades. So that's going to take us now to the 3rd team in the AFC South and quite possibly the most disappointing team, especially at those last few weeks in the league as well, too, with how they finished and the expectations. We're looking at the Colts now. Biggest loss. They've had a weird amount of them. You could say Mark Lewinsky, the right guard, just because a consistent starter for them for a while. Biggest addition, undoubtedly, Matty Ice, Matt Ryan. Filling in your quarterback spot, the best quarterback you've had there for a few years when you factor in where he's at in his career as well, too. No first-round picks. You're picking 42nd in the 2nd round is your first pick as well, too. So, Kelcey, if you're the Colts, where are you going here?
I'm still probably going offensive line. It's just a surprise for the Colts going offensive line. Yeah, who would have thought a team who focuses on RTDB wants to go offensive line? But yeah, I look at offensive line here. There's this is with a caveat of saying there's a possibility John Mechie falls to 42. And I don't know why he's been hated on so many draft boards. I think he is a fantastic prospect. Probably one of your smoother route runners out of everybody in this draft and the surest hands in the draft. Again, another guy coming off of injury, but his injury isn't as bad as his teammate's injury that happened later. So there's a lot to look at with this, and if he somehow falls to the Colts at 42, I 100% say that's your option. Otherwise, offensive line.
That's a safe bet as well, too. I look at it. Offensive line, you can't go wrong there. I'd imagine they're going to try and fill it. Like they already have like their 3 Pro Bowl caliber guys. They have some young guys they plugged in that played a lot last year through the injuries and the COVID. From listening to Chris Ballard and the team, they seem pretty cool with their offensive line right now. The young guys are going to plug and play. I think you go receiver here. You brought in Matt Ryan. You have Michael Pittman and the ghost of Paris Campbell if he can stay healthy. You need somebody to throw the ball to so Michael Pittman's not tripled every play and so they can't put 13 in the box. I look at a guy, if John Mechie's there, that's a great pick. I think he's going to go early in the second round, like 33, 34, 35. I think he's going to be a guy that slips just out of the first round. There, everyone jumps on him, like T. Higgins a couple of years ago, Michael Pittman, guys like that. When they could have been first round picks, but there's only 32 picks. Like they slip anyway.
I hope so. Let's say I hope that people are smart enough to do that.
Absolutely. But I do think some receivers that could be there. I like George Pickens out of Georgia as well, too. I think he's a big-time receiver who, if you put him on any team besides Georgia, I think he'd be a first-round pick. Georgia's offense was very not conducive for receivers. We'll put it politely as well, too. You didn't get a lot of opportunities, but he made plenty with those opportunities he's got. I think in this offense, he might not get a lot of opportunities early, but you imagine he'll make the most of what he can get as well, too. If Paris Campbell can stay healthy, that gives you a couple of dynamic receivers as well. Maybe they bring back T.Y. We'll see what they have to do there. I also like David Bell, the receiver out of Purdue, who in a very similar sense of like he is the only weapon and he still managed to make his best games were in the biggest games. Like what he did to Iowa and that defense too is absolutely incredible. He put up 200 on them. And Riley Moss, who if he wanted to come out this year would be a drafted corner, but he decided to go back and he still tore them apart. So I like David Bell or George Pickens as like those underrated receivers that could slip here. Maybe you take them there. Then in like the third round, I think you can go with a tight end. Just get some receiving weapons for Matt Ryan, honestly, because just he'll keep the ball moving on offense. He will get Nyheim Hines involved. He'll get like the offense will stay on schedule. He just needs somebody. He threw it to Russell Gage last year, and he threw it to guys whose names we can't even pronounce. Like he will make it happen, but the more you can give him, the better off you'll be.
Olamides Zacharias, by
that
the way.
Among many other.
That's the name you're looking for because I called him out many times for being a fantasy darling, and he worked every single week that I called him out. But no, to your point about George Pickens, a fantastic player, a very big recruit, hampered by injury in his time in Georgia, which might help him slip to this Colts team. And as you mentioned, if there was JT Barrett at quarterback, probably gets a lot more burn and a lot more action than Stetson Bennett. Oh yeah, sorry, JT Daniels, not
JT Barrett can't come back for year number 19.
Yeah, my bad. Wrong red and white team. So yeah, but no, JT Barrett, and if it wasn't Stetson Bennett, I think he gets a lot more burn. But yeah, I mean, in limited use, he was still a very effective receiver. So it is something to keep in mind on.
And then we talked a lot about receivers. Christian Watson's been climbing up a lot of boards. Receiver out of North Dakota State, giant and an absolute burner. So maybe he's there as well too. Like honestly, it's a great year for them to not have a first round pick and receiver, arguably the biggest need, because you were guaranteed to get a quality player slip out as well too. So definitely something.
And by the way, Christian Watson, half of Trey Lance's less than 300 passes in his college career were to him. So that tells you how good of an athlete he is. Absolutely
fantastic. So we'll see what they decide to do with that pick as well too. Definitely some interesting moves for the Colts now that they have a new quarterback. But that's going to take us to the last team in the AFC South and the number one seed overall in the AFC. A team that had a bunch of different starting players start for them and the coach of the year, the Tennessee Titans. Looking at their biggest loss, middle linebacker Rashaan Evans, leaving them as well too. Biggest addition, Robert Woods, also known as Bobby Trees, coming in for a 6th round pick that added a little bit of receiver depth for them as well too. They've coming off the ACL injury and with a big contract, we'll see how that plays out. They do have pick number 26, and then they have to wait till pick number 90. So, Kelcey, looking at the first round, what are some of their needs, and what are some guys you think can fit that mold for them?
Did you know they lost 4 offensive linemen total to free agency in some way, shape, or form? They did re-sign one, but there are still 3 more of their offensive line that were either starters or played at least 2 games worth of snaps that are not on their team right now. I hate that I keep saying offensive line, but does it surprise anybody when I say my credentials are in my waistline that I keep saying offensive line is my go-to here? I have to keep going back to it. And you mentioned this guy a few times earlier in our mock draft 1, and I actually kind of left him off my list because I didn't know where to fit him. But after reading some of his reading up on him, watching some of his highlights, and seeing where they're having him put it, Darian Kennard is being slid to a guard. Is what they're likely going to have him fit, and I think that's a fantastic fit here with Tennessee. A guy who is known as kind of that ugly, dirty mauler, and I mean, you want to talk about somebody that fits with Vrabel. Give Vrabel a guy that is known for a high motor, high energy, dirty, down in your face offensive lineman, and he's going to be like, "All right, I can work with you. You go next to Taylor Lewan, have fun." Like,
Derrick Henry's going to enjoy getting behind that big guy as well, too. It's one of the few guys he could probably hide behind in the NFL, too, as well. Just like, all right,
there's not very many.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that pick a lot. I think you can't go wrong with offensive line. To break up the mold, I went somewhere else as well, too. And something I've said a lot today, I'm going to continue to say, I look at receiver, and I think they still need a receiver spot. A.J. Brown banged up a lot last year. Robert Woods could be a nice fit. I want to see how he comes off that injury, how he works in this offense as well, too. We know California Robert Woods, a fantastic player. But outside, when he's not playing for a California team, it hasn't been quite as strong. So I do think you need another receiver just to kind of balance it out as well, to open things up. Help Ryan Tannehill, because as we saw, especially in that playoff game, he's a good quarterback, but he's not a go win you the game necessarily quarterback when everything's not clicking. So you want to make everything as easy for him as possible. I like a Treylon Burks type of receiver here as well, too. Yeah. Big, athletic, versatile. You can do a lot of the similar things you could do with Robert Woods, hand it to him on end arounds, let him just basically be huge and out-muscle, outsize the corners, him and A.J. Brown on the outside. He gives you a lot of heck, you could probably plug him at running back in certain spots as well, too, with Derrick Henry in the backfield. Kind of what they wanted Julio Jones to do last year, but the injuries took that away. I think Treylon Burks can offer you a lot of that this year. Or, as I mentioned, a Christian Watson, another big, fast guy here at the back end of the first round. I like the idea of just supplementing that receiving core. You can't, Tannehill's too good for you to just get rid of him necessarily, but he's not quite, you saw in the playoff game, he's gonna struggle a little bit when all things aren't clicking. We even saw it, even when they were winning, getting that number one seed, it was that fantastic defense and coaching job, as well as a weirdly supplemented run game. So I think just anything you could do to make Tannehill's job as easy as possible. And I think getting in some versatile receivers like that as well, too, could really help.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Definitely. That's definitely a possibility. I do want to throw something out that's not going to happen in the first round. This isn't like a first round option for him. But with them having a couple later picks, there's a guy that's sneaking up a couple draft boards for linebacker. A guy we've both seen play different positions than linebacker in college. Kid out of Montana State named Troy Anderson. Would not surprise me in the least if Tennessee is the team that takes the flyer on him as linebacker in one of these fourth or fifth round picks. Like, I could 100% see him in Tennessee in that situation. If not, maybe their third round pick, to be completely honest.
It's honestly a perfect fit considering Mike Vrabel had 8 touchdown receptions in his career on top of it. Troy Anderson played a running back in college as well. So a linebacker you could plug on offense and runs a 4.5 flat.
Yeah.
I think that's
absolute freak
really
of an athlete.
Hell, they could plug him at tight end. They still have a need at tight end. So you could put him at tight end in random spots like on the goal line and whatnot, or a fullback with Derrick Henry. I like that pick as well too. That could be a sneaky fun pick that maybe it's not a game-changing pick, but it could have some a moments pick, if that makes sense. It will have some big moments throughout the season.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to throw that out there as a possible landing spot for Troy Anderson because he has been climbing up a lot of boards, and it's worth mentioning that he did put on a pretty good performance at the combine himself.
Honestly, I can't think of a better fit now that you mentioned it as well too. That's a really good fit, and I think we mentioned tight end, maybe at pick number 90, depending on who's there. Maybe if a Trey McBride slips for some reason or something like that. Depending on how the
Isaiah
tight ends,
likely maybe.
Depending on how the tight ends fall, I think they should look for a tight end because they still have not replaced Jonnu Smith. So there are plenty of options. There's a lot of ways to go here for these teams as well too. The Souths were a little bit interesting as well too. So we had a couple teams with extra picks, a team with no first round picks, and a couple of really late ones as well too. So
it's just like every Southern dinner. Every time you have a holiday dinner down south, it's always interesting because you don't know which one is going to start a fight with another one. You also have to ask who brought this every single time because you don't know who brought the potato salad. We all know the story about the potato salads.
Unless there's raisins, and then you know who brought it as well too. But and then we've done the West, we've done the South. Next week we're going to do the North Division, so definitely want to stick around for those as well too. Leading up to our final mock draft and our overall draft coverage as well too. Stay tuned for that. We'll talk plenty more about that coming up as well, so you won't want to miss that. It's our favorite time of the year, and we can't wait to get into the thick of it. But that's going to do it for our journey to the draft coverage today, which is going to take us to Kelcey's real favorite part of every single broadcast, and that is, of course, Crunch Time. Crunch Time brought to you by Swift Lifestyles as well, too. Go and use code HIGHLOW Sports. Get yourself 15% off and help us get a little bit closer to our own specific type of flavor. So, Kelcey, we got about a minute left, and I think the best thing we could do here is just say thank you to everybody.
Yeah, that works for me. Thanks, guys. If you guys don't know what we're saying thank you for, it's not just one thing. It's really been everything, but really culminated lately with this March Madness bracket. We got to go on a Cinderella run. We went up with some of the top podcasts in Belly Up Sports. Some of these guys are ranked top 5 in their sport on Apple Podcasts, and we were able to go up and beat them because of everybody listening, everybody that reaches out, everybody that responds to us on Twitter. So seriously, from the bottom of our heart, thank you guys.
Absolutely. It was absolutely wonderful seeing us go on that magical run as well, too. It felt great. We just kind of do this for fun, and seeing us compete with others like that was absolutely incredible. So we thank you all for able to join in and support us with that, too. And hopefully we'll get to see you guys for a lot more, plenty more to come as well, too. But that'll do it for this week's episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We will see you guys next week for our journey to the draft coverage continues.